For all that talk about Napoleon being short, I thought he looked pretty tall in this movie.
Welcome back to HIVEMIND Unlimited.
And welcome to the 5th episode of How Did It Age, where we rewatch old movies and see how they've aged with modern context. But today, we've got a very special guest with us, Ramdin.
7-minute standing ovation at Cannes.
Oh, yeah, I got the 8-minute. I actually have a personal connection to this film. Just like Napoleon, I was exiled to St. Helena for war.
Well, that is exactly like him.
Well, war, crimes, like a suffix.
For today's video, we watched Napoleon Dynamite, a 2004 film that was filmed in Idaho.
You know what, Ro? You take the leads here.
All right, yeah, this movie was directed by Jared Hess and Jerusha Hess, written by them as well, a husband and wife filmmaker duo from BYU,
Brigham Young University, yeah.
Yeah, and they are both Mormons, members of the Church of Latter-day Saints. That was a big surprise for me finding out because this film and Nacho Libre do not strike to me as Mormon value films.
No, they definitely don't.
Yeah, this movie was actually born of a student project. They got a short called Palooka into the Slam Dance Film Festival a few years before. I think 1 year before.
Slam dance.
Yeah, it was exactly.
I was doing like a slam dunk and then a dance, like a slam dance.
Hit it one more time for us, little guy.
Yeah.
Shimmy, 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 yeah. Nice, man.
I love that.
That's not making it into any festival.
Anywho, the premise of the short was essentially the same, although it was in black and white. John Heder plays the exact same guy again. Is it John Heder or John Heder?
Heder.
John Heder.
Never walk away from a John Heder.
Ooh.
Oh, cool.
Doppler effect. What happened was, at Slam Dance Film Festival, the brother of a guy who was able to finance a motion picture film named Jonathan Kuhn, the brother called him up and said, I just saw this short. It was fucking incredible. You need to fund it. And Jonathan essentially wrote the check for $200,000 and like asked no questions and just like let them make the movie. A lot of this information is either, a little bit cursory from the Wikipedia and then from just interviews with Jared and Jerusha that have been published. There was one that was in the BYU paper, another that was in the Salt Lake Tribune.
Ooh, so love that one.
Yeah.
Very, very specific vibe.
Yeah.
Definitely our lowest budget film that we've talked about in this series so far. And also the oldest for some reason.
That is weird.
Yeah, 2004, and a cult classic. It really made the rounds on the early internet. I remember my older cousins showing me scenes from it, and then I finally watched the whole thing. And the first time I watched it, I remember it being like the first ever bootleg stream I had ever watched.
Oh, nice.
Like I wasn't able to watch it like in full quality for a while until
cool.
I eventually then got like the DVD or something.
Riley's a scallywag on the Pirate Bay. Yo-ho-ho. Walk the plank, matey.
Yeah, that's a good character.
Yeah, I was 11.
Yeah. Oh.
I was 11 years old.
Hey, I'm sorry that you went through that, man.
Yeah, we all do.
Yeah, this felt like one of those movies that was like one of the first movies I felt like I was cool because I liked kind of deal. Like it was like just under the surface of mainstream. And like if I found friends that also liked it, I was like, oh, we're kind of in the know here of some different kind of comedy.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say also, considering that this is the earliest film that you guys have watched for the series so far, and that it was directed and written by two Mormons in the early 2000s, aged remarkably well.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about it later, but I was blown away.
I was blown away as well, and something that Graydon said to me that I resonate with is I think I like it more as an adult than I did as a kid because I notice things about it as someone who's made videos, someone who like understands a little bit about how to put a story together. It is very impressive in what it's able to accomplish, especially in vibe.
Yeah.
Whereas a kid, I was just like, oh, random. Like,
it's
so
just
random.
It's just awkward and has like catchphrases in it. And as a kid, I just thought that was funny. But also to get it done in 82 minutes is insane.
And to get it done in 23 days.
Yeah.
They filmed this in 23 days.
Yeah. 23 days later.
They filmed it 23 days on location in Preston, Idaho, where Jared Hess grew up. And basically the entire crew was just like BYU students who were like friends of him. John Heder was an animation student at BYU. This is like where he got his break, from what I can tell. It's the same thing you said, where as a kid it felt really random and sort of just like off the walls. Now I watch it and I see this very like earnest portrayal of just growing up in that location, and sort of like the simultaneous sense of like it's a little bit meandering and melancholy at times, but there's this real like big sense of optimism and like care for the place that it comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and another thing I love about it too is that I've seen so many things try to be, quote, camp, you know, and this feels like maybe the blueprint for that almost, at least in like a comedy or coming of age comedy style. This was like the blueprint for that. It wasn't trying to be camp. It just was.
It had to be, yeah.
Like look at the intro credits being just like plates of food with little like fun little things. That's such like a film student idea to do, but it pulls it off so well and doesn't feel like it's trying anything. It feels like it just did what was natural for it.
Well, the John Waters fans are gonna be on your dick for that one, brother. But funny thing about the intro sequence, they say this on the Wikipedia, that it was only added in because people were kind of confused about like the time period. So like 9 months after they wrapped shooting or something like that, they like some people were watching a screen and they were like, we have no idea when this came out. So they just went to the cinematographer's basement and got all those shots with John Heder's hands, and then they were like. The executives were like, this looks great, but we should get you guys a hand model. And then they got them the hand model, but the hand model's skin was too dark. So they had to like, the final sequence is like a Frankenstein of John Heder's hand, Jared Hess's hand, and then like a hand model.
Wow.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
You kind of told us the story of when you first saw it.
I saw it right when it came out, but I have not seen this movie in 10 years.
Yeah, same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think actually 10 to 12 years. I saw it in middle school. I'm a bit younger than you guys, so when it came out, I was like 3 or 4. By the time that I was I was like 11 or 12, it was like a cult classic, and I remember seeing it with my friend and just thinking it was so kooky and like unique.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like a real in-house favorite for me and my sister. We loved it and watched it incessantly for like a couple months, and then, I don't know, it just kind of died out, and I hadn't revisited it in, about 10 years.
My favorite line, maybe a little bit of an unorthodox one, because I feel like there are so many iconic line deliveries in this entire movie, just because like the way that every character speaks is so distinct, is when Deb is showing Napoleon her carrier, her like Pelican briefcase of lanyards that she made, and Napoleon like is so blithe, he's just like, whatever, I already made about infinity of those at scout camp. And it's so good just because it brings me back to that time back in like elementary and middle school where I heard kids talk like that so often. It's uncanny.
Yeah.
It's so simple, and it's wild to me that it's delivered by just like an actor who's in one scene. But when Uncle Rico is trying to sell the 24-piece ceramic set to the couple, so he's got like the 24-piece box, and it says 24 pieces fragile on it, and out of it he says like, if you purchase this, you get this too, and he takes out a huge like galleon, like a fucking sail boat, like beautiful model, and puts it down, and the woman looks at it and says, I want that.
Yeah, he taps her husband and says,
I want that. And that one's really good.
As if to not show the salesman your cards, she whispers it to her husband.
Yeah.
I want that.
and then my other favorite one is the pitch for Rex Kwon Do, where one of the positive attributes he describes is the wisdom of a man.
As the Rex Kwon Do is putting a woman in a headlock in the video.
Oh God.
Which we'll get into, things that aged poorly.
Yeah, it's a little bit touch and go with some of the misogyny stuff at times.
Yeah.
I feel like a huge degree of like the likability and relatability of so many of these lines comes from the fact that in many of the interviews I watched, Jared Hess said that this dialogue was autobiographical and it was transcribed, like directly transcribed, because he grew up with 5 brothers. Jerisha Hess, his wife, grew up with 7 brothers, and a lot of the stuff in the movie is just taken from their own lives. Jared Hess worked at an egg farm. The llama that's in the movie is his mother's llama.
Wow.
It belongs to her. The Preston High apparently is the high school that Jared Hess went to, and they just filmed all of the school scenes there. So back to front, it is all this guy's life and coming from his own experience.
Some honorable mentions for best line for me. I know it's an iconic one, but the guy that asked Napoleon for his tots initially just delivers it with such urgency, like he's so hungry. And that's like such an essential part of that guy's character, because later when he steals the kid's bike, mid-theft, he goes, what, do you have any chips or something? He's just like the hungry bully at school that wants to either wants your stuff, or you can like feed him to like slow him down. Like that's like a hilarious little dynamic. When Napoleon finishes his day at the chicken farm and the farmer taps his chest for 1 second and says, "Can't find my checkbook. Hope you don't mind if I pay you in change." That is a great line.
And then it's $1 an hour.
Yeah, it's it's like $6. It's like $1 an hour. Gotta shout out Napoleon's last line in the movie, which he tells Deb that he caught her a delicious bass, which is like his olive branch to her to patch the relationship up.
I love that feels so random.
Yeah.
But a line that I wrote down before that is like when Deb kind of hates Napoleon because Uncle Rico calls her and says that Napoleon said that she would want the Bust Must Plus, like the
herbal supplements,
herbal breast enhancement supplements, and she's obviously very upset and like calls Napoleon, and Napoleon doesn't really know how to defend himself on the phone, so he's like, "Well, Deb pretty much hates me." Pedro then says, "Do you have anything to give to her?" Like first thing he says, like he's just like, "Well, maybe you could patch this up with a gift."
Yeah.
And Napoleon says, "No, not unless she likes fish."
Yeah, like he's sitting on some bass.
Yeah, he has a delicious bass, and he's hoping that Deb likes fish enough that she'll forgive him for something he didn't actually do.
Yeah.
Which is it's just great that then that says, "I caught you a delicious bass."
And it's one of those great lines in the movie that just alludes to like a whole life that you don't see for the characters. Because in the movie you see there is no fresh water, there is no lake, there are no rivers.
It's like desolate.
It is just like a prairie all the way down.
Yeah.
My last honorable mention, I love when Napoleon and Uncle Rico are checking out at the mart where Summer Wheatley is working. And Rico is like rejecting the things that Napoleon wants. He said, we can't afford the fun pack. And he says, "What do you think? Money grows on trees in this family?" And I just thought that was so strange. It usually just stops at money doesn't grow on trees. But Rico making it specific to this family, their family, I found that to be so funny. What do you think? Money grows on trees in this family? It's like as if it does for other families. He has like, Rico is like alters like a lot of like colloquialisms or like phrases that like almost sound normal, but then he just tweaks them a little bit to be like obscure.
Don't tell him about money trees, eh?
Wait, oh, yeah. Yep.
Don't tell him about generational wealth, right?
Boom.
Cool. My dad's rich.
George Soros?
Ultimately, my favorite line, though, in the movie is after Pedro hits the piñata of Summer, and he's in the principal's office, and the principal looks at him and says, "I don't know how they do things down in Juarez, but smashing a piñata of Summer Wheatley is a disgrace to you, me, and the entire Gem State." That's like just the perfect line. He says Summer Wheatley specifically. Other piñatas are fine, but the most popular girl in school, how dare you? You've disgraced yourself, me, and the entire state of Idaho.
And it really does show he does not know how they do things down in Juarez.
Yeah. It's awesome.
I had a few lines that I really loved. One is when Deb says, "Where's your locker?" with a mouthful of sandwich.
Yes.
It just has food all, "Where's your locker?"
That one is delivered so well.
It's so funny. I also love when Napoleon says, "This is pretty much like the worst video ever made."
Yeah.
To Rico. And then Kip says, "Come on, Napoleon. Like anyone could know that."
Yes, I love that line.
Because he's just saying like the worst video ever made.
Yeah.
He's like anyone could know. He just takes it immediately to like the idea that there are so many videos made that you couldn't know what the worst one ever made was.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's great that like Kip and Napoleon are meant to be brothers, and they're so like inexplicably different.
Yeah.
They look nothing alike. They talk nothing alike. It seems like they were both raised in like separate petri dishes.
Yeah.
You know, it's great.
And then I love also when Rico and Kip are working on a scheme and Napoleon walks in and they just look at him for a second, and then Rico looks at Kip and says, "Let's go, Kipper. I think we should take this someplace a little more private."
Doesn't want Napoleon getting in on it.
And calls him Kipper, which I think is awesome.
It's like a one-off, too. It doesn't call him that again.
And then after Rico does that, like, that scheme on Napoleon where he, like, ruins his thing with Deb, Rico walks in and there's just a moment of silence. And then Rico just says, "Well, I wish you wouldn't look at me like that, Napoleon." And then Napoleon just responds with, "I wish you'd get out of my life and shut up."
And he is kind of bug-eyed looking at him at that moment. It's like a kind of a different look from Heder.
Yeah. Also, when Napoleon's looking at that suit that he wants to get for the dance.
Yes.
And he's standing with Pedro and just says, yeah, it looks pretty sweet. It's awesome. It's incredible. Just loves this suit so much. It's the weirdest suit, but it's like, it's perfect for his character.
He's overcome.
But he just absolutely has to say 3 different things about it. Pedro's whole sequence where he shaves his head, and he's telling that story about how the hair on his head is hot.
Yep.
And he needs to get it off of him. He's like telling that story all the way through, and then Napoleon's response is, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
That's the entire response.
He's been there before.
Their friendship is so one-dimensional, but so sweet in that way.
It's very beautiful.
Yeah, they're like comforting each other, but they never do it directly. And I love that Napoleon just, honestly, Pedro just likes that he's saying, I understand you.
Yeah.
Like, he's not being like, why would you do that? Like, he would never question him. He just goes, I know what you mean.
Pretty much his best friend. They hung out for one day.
And it's a great example of like how empathetic the movie is, because like, I mean, so much of it is autobiographical, and a lot of people who are probably like, you know, neurodivergent or grew up around autistic people totally relate to this experience of having another kid that like just communicates exactly how they feel, and it's so comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah. The awkwardness never feels awkward between them. It only is like when it's put under the microscope of a character who is more popular or deemed to have more social capital. Like, that's when it feels awkward. But when it's just them together, you can tell they both just like being around each other.
Well, and it's like whatever the other one has, they both just gas it up with no like outside taste for anything else. Like, Pedro's bike is the coolest bike Napoleon's ever seen, hands down, no question about it.
He also says he's like you're so good at hooking up with chicks.
Yeah.
Then it's never seen. It's just kind of like they're willing to just like gas each other up in a way that is like almost imaginary.
Yeah. Napoleon's drawings aren't good, but Pedro's like, well, you're really good at drawing creatures and warriors.
Yeah.
So like that's one of your skills. Like, you're great at that. And it's like no questions asked. They just like love what the other one does.
Yeah, like in my memory, Pedro's accent is like maybe played up or like supposed to be like a gag, and I thought that would be something that maybe didn't age well. But now I realize every character talks like that. He's like very short, very direct, like vague sentences almost, but that are very, very evocative.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a hitter. Like, so many lines are just punch you. You're like, oh my God, in 3 words, you got it all across. Is perfect.
I guess I'll do the obvious one here. The final dance scene is fucking perfect, phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
I was reading up on it, so it's like kind of like a famous fact that like the movie was really, really low budget, and so during the production they were like staying with just random people who lived in Preston, Idaho. Like, you know, it was like friends that were helping them make the movie, and that during this last sequence they only had 10 minutes of film left. They could afford to do 3 takes of John Heder's dance sequence, which was put into the movie because Jared just like noticed that John likes dancing. So they were like, yeah, it's got to be a climactic scene where he dances. So they made like the iron-on Vote for Pedro shirt, and they just got him up there. He danced to Off the Wall to Jamiroquai Canned Heat, and then they ended up going with Jamiroquai, and it is mind-blowing to me. That was half of the movie's budget. So this movie didn't have a $400,000 budget. It had a $200,000 budget and then a $200,000 Jamiroquai Canned Heat budget. And it's just ridiculous to me to think Jamiroquai, as fantastic of a band they are, as fantastic of a vocalist JK is, 200,000 fucking bucks. What?
Yeah.
For Canned Heat?
And this is a movie that we'll get into the soundtrack later. It has big it has Time After Time, Forever Young. Like, it has big songs in it. And so to me, I'm like, why is that the expensive song?
Yeah.
You know, it has the White Stripes song. Like, it has a lot of stuff in there.
It's so funny. That just makes it even funnier.
It made that song infinitely more popular.
Yeah,
and
it is also just the perfect song for the scene, because that song is just like, it's just like eudaimonia. It's so like happy and excited, and so like there's so much momentum to it that watching Napoleon just like meekly walk up, do the dance, and then run off stage with his head down while the crowd freaks out and just like gives him a standing ovation.
I don't think it would have worked with a bigger song like Off the Wall. You know, like it had to be this kind of like niche, but that good of a song, that danceable of a song. It had to have its own moment, you know? Like, a lot of people didn't know that song when they watched this movie. and then they left being like, wow, what a song.
Yeah, if I directed it, he would have danced to Elliott Smith.
That would have sucked.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been good.
That would have sucked.
Well, the reason I didn't direct it, that is the reason I didn't direct it.
The reason you didn't direct it is because you were 3 years old when it came out.
And you're not Mormon.
I think age is just a number, man.
Oh.
You can clip that. Another one of the best scenes, which in the movie came off as random until I found out that it was a true story, is the scene, and it really is just a one-off. There's no context for the scene. It just happens, and then they move on. A school bus of kids is driving by a farm field where a farmer is about to shoot a cow, and you don't see the school bus until, the farmer walks out with a shotgun, puts it to the cow's head. You cut to the kids inside of the bus, and then back to like this shot of the road and the cow. The bus drives by, there's a gunshot, and all the kids just scream. And it's so fucked up, but it was a real story that Jared has put into the movie, which is unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely was like, what is the point of this scene? But at the same time, it's fucked up, but it's so funny. Yeah. Like, for some reason, especially because you don't see it. Yeah. Like, if you saw it, of course it would change the way that the movie feels. But like the fact that it's just the sound and the screaming of the kids, it's like stuff like that has to happen in Preston, Idaho.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's the perfect cut because like it's just Napoleon looking at it first and you're like, oh, Jesus, are we about to see this guy shoot his cow? And then the bus slides in to save the audience. But then at that moment, you're like, oh, God, now all these kids are going to see it. And then it's, it's just perfect because we don't have to see it, but you realize all the kids saw it.
Apparently, getting the cows to be cooperative during the movie was difficult.
Yeah.
So, like, you have to really want to do that scene. So many scenes like that. I mean, the final scene costing $200,000 alone.
Yeah.
It was just their vision, and they totally accomplished it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think my scenes that aged bad are more of moments in scenes, and I think that you guys will relate to them. There's a use of the R word in this that, I don't know, it's used by Napoleon, and it just kind of feels unnecessary and a little bit degrading and weird. I think the scene where Uncle Rico pulls up to Summer and her friend walking down the street, and it's kind of creepy to them while giving out the flyers. It's definitely like supposed to be creepy. Uncle Rico is supposed to be one of those guys, but looking back, it's not a huge boon to the movie. Like, I don't think there's much of a benefit to Rico being creepy. I think he's a much better character outside of that, just being like this loser who sits in his RV and then like films videos of him throwing footballs at the camera.
Yeah, and like wishing he was still a football star. Yeah, it does. It felt a little bit, I didn't remember it, and I kind of felt like the character had fully formed by the time that it happens in the movie, that I was kind of like, you don't need to be doing that.
Yeah, I think his next get-rich-quick scheme just could have been some other kind of vague pyramid scheme. You know, he's selling Tupperware at first, and then, like, for this next step to be selling breast enhancement herbal supplements, it could have just been something else. And
I will say it is funny to me that he is selling that.
Yeah.
But I just think just that interaction with the high school girls being like, if you need something, let me know. You know, is a little. It has implications that feel a little weird. Like, I feel like they would have made a different choice nowadays.
Yeah.
But it's not like a movie ruiner by any means to me. It's just kind of like, it's still as strange as the other comedy in the movie. It just feels a little distasteful.
Yeah, I think it's even weirder when he calls Deb's body soft.
Yeah.
That's like and that scene, I was like, we might have pushed it a little too hard here because he like walks up behind her and it's like,
And then a scene that kind of didn't age poorly or like well for me is it also has to do with Uncle Rico's breast enhancement surgery. He is advertising them to a transgender woman, and they don't make any sort of kerfuffle about it. She's not like the punchline. Rico's definitely the punchline in the scenario because he's trying to be like, what if you could? He like holds two pans up to her chest and is like, this could be for you. And she's just kind of like looking at him. And then Rex Kwon Do walks in. It's like Rex Kwon Do's wife, and he's like, you piece of shit. And just, you can hear Rico getting beat up. And later on you see him with bandages on. To me, there's like the aspect of that's, you know, it's nice that a character is married to a trans woman and that like she's not really made the butt of a joke necessarily, but it does have a sort of weird vibe to it in that you're kind of waiting for something to go wrong, and I don't think it has the exact like peak of empathy for that type of person that the rest of the movie does.
To me, that's like the scene where Rico finally gets his.
Yeah, 100%.
And like it happens in the final like flourish of the movie where Kip changes his style and is so in love with LaFonda. Napoleon hits his dance, and then that scene happens with Rico, like in the midst of all that. And it's like, oh, the creepy uncle finally gets beat up for crossing a line. Like he's gone too far, and everybody's kind of taking their steps towards finishing their character's development. But I agree. Yeah, that's not the greatest scene, but I'm glad he got his ass beat some way or another.
Yeah. I also imagine that back in the early 2000s, the fact that Rex was married to a trans woman was probably played for laughs. So,
yeah.
Right. Can't go through this section without talking about Kip and LaFonda's dynamic because, you know, it's tough because I do think it is very funny.
Yep.
I will say that. It made me laugh out loud.
Yeah.
And it is supposed to... It is, like, there are moments that are laugh out loud, but... it's definitely something that aged poorly in the idea that he's like the nerdy white guy, and it's confusing almost because she likes him as this nerdy white guy, but then is trying to like, you know, get him to dress different, get him to like dance and all that stuff.
He wears a do-rag.
Yeah, like she has him wear a do-rag, and he talks, you know, he says phrases that are supposed to be kind of like, you know, not what he would typically say.
Right.
You know, he's like peace out and stuff like that. It's very weird, but
Peace out, Napoleon.
Yeah.
It is a very like rural interpretation of what somebody from the inner city is like.
From Detroit.
Yeah, from Detroit. Let's hear it for
LaFonda's
Detroit.
from Detroit.
Shout out LaFonda.
Along with LaFonda, which is a normal name, but I imagine maybe was put in the script because they thought it sounded silly.
Yeah.
And they spell
very,
it.
Yeah, it's like very different from all of the other names you hear. I think the thing I appreciate about LaFonda's character, though, is that when she arrives, the only thing she does, she like dresses in business casual and she smiles really slow and winks.
Yeah.
And I think that's silly. That could have been the whole gag for me.
Yeah.
I think that taking it to like the point where she gives him a chain and stuff, it does feel like a sort of weird racial dynamic going on.
Yeah,
there.
strange escalation there.
I would say also the main dynamic of the Kip and LaFonda thing, to me, it seems like, why is this beautiful woman from Detroit into Kip? You know, this like random, like, he has no personality, no aura.
No riz.
He's just like no riz. And the guy who played him, Aaron Rell, like is not an actor now. Literally just based him off of his little brother.
Yeah.
But I feel like back then it was probably more so played up that like, oh, it's interracial and like, why is Kip into her or whatever, which is a little less appropriate.
The one thing I do like about it is that it's very early online relationship thing.
Yeah.
It's like it's very the dawn of when you could meet someone from across the country and have some sort of like love thing. And I feel like you're almost made to believe that she's not gonna be who she says she is.
Yeah.
So then it's just very like it's kind of like an interesting moment when she shows up and is like a beautiful woman.
Yes.
And really likes Kip.
Yeah, that she's actually in love with him, that Kip was not lying.
Yeah.
And they have this blossoming relationship that ultimately ends in a wedding.
Yeah.
Like Shakespearean comedy of old.
Some little scenes that I just wanted to shout out that I think are really great. He throws an action figure out the bus on a string. That's like the first scene. The kid next to him goes, "What are you going to do today, Napoleon?" He says, "Whatever I want." And then the first thing he does is he throws an action figure out the bus on a string. And I'd be lying if I said after watching this movie as a kid, I did that. Like with my family. Me and my sister did that without my parents
You'd
knowing.
be lying if you said that, or you did do it?
I did do it.
You did it? Or
I did it.
Are you
I didn't do it.
Are you lying?
You
Not
realize
lying.
that's a Class A felony in Detroit, right?
Well, I did it.
Be careful, man. I mean,
dragged
statute of
little-
limitations is up, but just be careful what you admit to on the show, okay?
Thank you.
Try to keep it PG, G, TVYA stuff.
Stay woke. But yeah, that scene is just so obscure, and I think it's like a perfect starting point for his character. He just like, that's something he thinks is cool, and it's like he's kind of breaking a rule, but it's like, why? You know, like it's like not an edgy thing he's doing, and it's like also very childish. Like he has an action figure on him. It's just so bizarre. I had to like stop myself in the first 20 minutes of this movie. Like I wrote the first like 6 scenes down.
Yeah.
Just as like, oh, well, this is one of the best scenes. Oh, this is one of the best scenes. Rex's intro scene, amazing. Neighbor shooting the cows on there, slopping Tina's food down.
Yeah.
That is just an iconic, like, such a perfect, what? They just feed the llama leftover, like, rotten casserole, and the llama's, like, not even that interested in it. And Napoleon's, like, upset with the chore, and he's just flicking it on the ground. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, this movie also maybe a little bit not as related to seeing best and worst, but it feels iconic and it feels a lot older than it is. Because you and me watched Wet Hot American Summer the other night, which is a movie that's meant to feel like it's from like, the 80s, 90s, 70s. And it still feels like it was made in the 2000s. Napoleon Dynamite feels like it could be from like 1990 or something.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
Maybe my favorite scene in the whole movie, mostly because I don't understand it, I still don't get why it's in the movie, is just the scene where Napoleon's drinking 3 different milks for like a test. and he drinks the first one and just says, the defect in this one is bleach.
Yep. So he's just drinking. He's drinking bleach.
Yeah, he's just drank bleach. Yeah.
And then they confirm that's true, and he goes, yes.
He does a slow yes. He's like, yes. And he does that after all of them.
Yep.
But then the second one, he says, this one tastes like the cow got into an onion patch.
Yep.
They say it's correct. He goes, yes. And I'm like, why were they testing for that?
Yeah.
What? I don't understand what this test is. I don't know why Napoleon's doing it.
Well, him and Pedro are part of the FAA because the scene that follows the milk scene is Pedro looking at a cow's udder and he says, the problem here is the 5th nipple. And it's like a little nipple on the udder. And he goes, a normal milk cow should only have 4. And there's a guy next to him with a clipboard who's like, I'll be damned. He got it right again.
Doesn't he say like a good amount is 4
Yeah, a
or
good
something
amount
like
is
that?
4.
Yeah.
But they're just like, and then in Pedro's presidential speech, he references how they're going to do more FAA stuff. Yeah. So it's like part of their like nerdy hobby. Like Pedro and Napoleon are just standouts in the FFA. They're like the all-stars of the future farmers of America for whatever reason. That's
See, I never picked up on what FFA stood for, so that's why it doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
But now it does, I guess, that they were doing the chicken stuff. And
it was
then,
huge in Swanton.
Okay.
You do like 4-H or you're in the FFA,
Yeah.
Big in Seattle as well.
Or,
I raised horses. Seabiscuit.
Really?
Seabiscuit. I raised him.
No, you did not.
Yeah. And Seattle's where the Kentucky Derby is too.
Bob Gafford raised Seabiscuit.
I don't know about you guys, but I see biscuit, I eat it. Hungry.
Ow, ow, ow.
Last shout out I want to give for greatest scenes is when Napoleon just whips an orange at Rico's truck. And then he throws another one at him and then they fight in the pasture. That scene's awesome.
The wide shot where they're both trying to advance at each other and then he throws the orange and just Rico launches at him full speed. It's pretty great.
I don't know. I think there are slight changes. Like I said, I think it'd be lighter on some of the racial jokes and probably soften up Rico's character just a little bit. And obviously, I don't think Napoleon would say the R word, but really that's kind of it. I think it's one of those movies that it could have been in the 80s or the 90s. You know, it doesn't have to be the 2000s. Its mission is very unique. And so I think it accomplishes that. And there's not much that would change if you redid the movie today.
Yeah, it's autobiographical. It's about his life, how he saw it. It's about him growing up around these brothers that were like weird and idiosyncratic and lived an isolated life compared to how many people grow up today. And I think that's gonna hit no matter what.
Agree with you on softening the Rico character, but I don't really see this movie needs to be what it is. It's autobiographical, it's low budget, it's strange, and that's what makes it so good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't think you guys would be able to guess what Jared Hess is directing right now. I would bet my life on it. Can I get a guess from you?
Paddington 3.
Paddington 3. Can I get a guess from you?
The new Batman.
No. Jared Hess was in New Zealand filming the Minecraft movie with Jason Momoa.
Really?
The Minecraft movie.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Do you think it will be good?
Absolutely fucking not. Jason Momoa in the Minecraft movie? That's gonna be a 2-pack of ass.
Come on, give it a chance, bro.
I'll give Jared a chance, man.
Thank you.
I mean,
what if it's just as awkward and weird as Napoleon? Jason Momoa's yes. He's running around in Minecraft.
Yeah. I'm like a warrior that protects against the Ender Dragon. I protect the villagers. I'm kind of like an Iron Golem, but netherite armor is awesome.
That is crazy.
Wow.
Good for Jared Hess. That movie's probably going to make a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
I usually love the experiment of trying to recast, but this one felt wrong to do it. I thought maybe if Pedro was played by a young Danny Trejo with the ponytail kind of iconic look, you know what I mean? And he had a little more of a gruff Maybe like he embodied some more of the personality types like of his cousins. Like he's this tough kind of, guy from Juarez. I think that would have been awesome, but I don't know if the age lines up there. I don't know if Danny Trejo could have played a high schooler in 2004.
No, I think he was like already 50.
Yeah, probably. But maybe that would have been funny too. But that was really the only thought that crossed my mind.
Yeah. I was going to say Napoleon should have been played by Danny Trejo at, the machete age.
Oh,
I think it would have been great.
Nice.
No, but I'm kind of on the same page as you here. It's so funny that this movie is such a huge cultural moment and such an iconic movie, and none of the actors could be swapped out because they were all mostly just people who wanted to be in the movie. John Grease was in it, but his manager said, don't be in this movie, you don't want to do this. And he was laughing so hard at the script, he decided to just drive himself out to Preston, Idaho to film it. I really do think that everybody in this movie is cast correctly. I think somebody other than John Heder playing Napoleon Dynamite would be sacrilege.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for this, I agree. I said I can't imagine much recasting with this one, but maybe Deb could be Kristen Stewart and Napoleon could be Robert Pattinson, and then Pedro could be Taylor Lautner. Just I don't know. It's just I just kind of saw that.
Yeah. Honestly, that'd be sexy.
Yeah.
I'm getting an idea. Okay, a little bit of a tweak to the plot.
Like it?
Robert Pattinson. So Napoleon Dynamite could be an eternal vampire trapped in stasis. And,
all vampires are eternal.
This guy hasn't heard about garlic and crosses, huh?
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Kill yourself! He could be a vampire, in stasis in adolescence, and maybe Deb is a forbidden fruit,
Oh, I absolutely hate it. I feel like it should be exactly the same with just those three actors.
Yeah, I agree.
Totally.
We mentioned it already, but this movie has an outstanding soundtrack.
Unbelievable.
And outside of the standout tracks that we can all touch on, the little ditties.
That organ funk.
And it's just it's 4 tracks. It's something you could make on Ableton in 60 seconds with a little lick, and that's what makes it feel so fun.
And the funniest part of that to me is those tracks are an electric piano, a Roland C78 drum machine, and that is the preset I have for when I open Ableton.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 instruments that I make most of my tracks on. So I was just hearing it being my fucking music is Napoleon Dynamite core.
Yeah.
So sick.
Yeah. But I cannot think of a comedy movie with a better soundtrack than this. And it really is not the traditional sort of needle drops, look at this cool song. I think I Can Tell That We're Gonna Be Friends, The White Stripes. For the title sequence is fantastic and immediately sets the tone that this is a silly movie, but it's not a laugh at movie. It's more of a laugh with movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and sort of just feeling it.
And it's
wholesome
and about friendship.
Yeah, it's sweet.
Yeah, it's sweet.
It's so
Walk
sweet.
With me.
I feel like it kind of defined the era of comedies that came after it.
Yeah.
Because we got Juno because of this movie. We got elements of those other kind of Judd Apatow movies. Felt like they almost were indie coming of age mixed with raunchy comedy because of the sweetness of this movie and the soundtrack of this movie. I mean, it redefines The River by Bette Midler with that one scene. Every time I hear that song now, I think of like that. And then obviously, Canned Heat we already talked about. But I also love that bluegrass song at the end.
Yeah.
That is such a cool. it really feels like it pays homage to just where they shot it and how it all feels when you're looking at these big pastures and all this livestock. It's
Forever Young at the Dance.
Oh yeah.
And Time After Time at the Dance.
Yes, both of those are just perfect for that soft lit streamer filled gymnasium with terrible suits and dresses.
Oh yeah.
And then the outro, The Promise by When in Rome, is absolutely a perfect climax to it.
Yeah.
Flawless.
Yeah, it's a great soundtrack.
The funniest thing to me in the midst of all that is that we are led to believe that Jamiroquai is LaFonda's cousin.
I asked this question. I wrote down this question: are we, or did LaFonda's cousin just make a tape?
Oh,
of favorite songs
CD
or something.
Whatever.
Yeah, but I also think that's kind of funny because it's implying that she thought that Kip would like Jamiroquai.
Yeah.
I think that's just great, especially because it's not a deep cut, but not a lot of people were listening to Jamiroquai.
Right.
I mean, not everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she just keeps it on her.
Yeah.
She goes, "Oh, you like to dance?" Opens her purse. "Check this out. My cousin made it." And Napoleon's like, and then he uses it. It's so weird.
Yeah.
It's unclear if he had listened to it before he danced to it too.
Yeah.
We don't see him. I that's sort of like my interpretation is he just like gives them the tape. He's like, this is what I got right now.
Yeah.
And he just busts it down, which is how they filmed the scene too. There was like light choreography, but it was mostly just like Soul Train moves.
Well, he learns to dance from that thing, the VHS that he gets at the thrift store, and then it's almost like LaFonda gives him the song that, you know, inspires all the dance moves he's now learned through a VHS that is like a guy on a headset. And he's like...
Yeah, and you see it through the crack in the door earlier that Napoleon is dancing.
Yeah.
And in that scene, you can see that he's doing some of those moves that end up in the end. Like, so you kind of get the idea that he's been listening to the, you know...
Yeah.
Like, he would probably be doing that every day.
Sure.
You know, he's drinking the Gatorade afterwards. He's sweaty as hell.
Yeah. And that wrinkle of it, of the soundtrack where it feels like LaFonda is kind of like the cool older girlfriend that like his brother has that's giving him this tape, and it's like she seems like one of the only like purely motivated people in the movie that's just like, here, check this out, you'll like this if you like dancing. Like actually taking an interest in what he's doing and like contributing to it. And it's just so sweet that like she's so nice to Napoleon, the most dickhead guy of all time.
Most definitely, no doubter.
So I would recommend this movie. I think that especially if you're somebody who likes a feel-good movie, the ending had me just like grinning from ear to ear. It felt so good.
It really
to be in those moments. But if you're somebody who hasn't really been a fan of like kooky comedies or indie comedies before, I can imagine that this might be something that just sort of like slides right past you.
Yeah.
But if you watch HIVEMIND, I feel like you'd get something out of this.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's why I recommend it to everyone, because the people that say they don't like it, I can then weed out of my life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I would absolutely recommend, if you have not seen this, or if you're like me and you saw it in the 2000s and haven't seen it since then, rewatch it, because I think you will find something new to love about it that you didn't understand maybe if you were a kid at that time like I was.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Although 51-year-old computer scientist Len Bertoni did say in 2008 that it was maddeningly hard to determine how much people will like it, I think you should watch it regardless. I did not write a letterboxd review for this yet. I think that I would probably give it a 3.5 stars. Okay. I think I like it a whole lot. 3.5 stars is very good for me. Yeah, I think I love it. And it's if I had to give it a little tagline, I would say it's probably a feel-good movie that you can like keep with you for the rest of your life without having to worry that like you're going to return to it and it's going to be abhorrent or whatever. Yeah. It's just going to like live in your heart as like a little pocket of Preston, Idaho, and like a little journey of friendship. And that's like so lovely to me. Yeah.
I gave it 4 stars, and I wrote, a movie that's most impressive feat is remaining dry when it would have been so easy to get wet.
Ooh, girl.
That's great.
Because I really did think there were a lot of moments that they could have made more outlandish or more animated comedy, and they never do.
Nope.
And its pacing was remarkable to me.
Yeah.
It is so easy to consume because it is the same momentum the whole time.
Yeah.
And I love a movie like that too, where there's a line and then you have a moment to laugh at that line and you don't miss the next one.
Yeah.
Because I want to absorb everything that they say, because they say so many subtly funny things throughout it. So I loved it. I loved it more than I loved it when I was a kid.
Yeah. And this is absolutely one, if you're like hanging out with your friends on a Friday night, put it on.
Yeah.
It's 82 minutes.
Perfect.
Bone dry. You can watch it like hyper focused, or you can like start talking over it in the background.
Yeah.
You're still going to get something out of it. It also looks beautiful. There's some great shots.
Yeah, it looks
like,
really good.
Shot on film. It's just like mind blowing to me that this was a student filmmakers from BYU, 23 days. And it's just like this fucking good. Students don't make movies this good usually.
They don't.
It's wild.
I'm bumping my rating up from what I even have in my notes. I'm going 4.5 stars. It's gonna be like the highest rated movie I've given on Letterboxd in a minute.
Yeah.
And I said it's a genius masterpiece, and it's kind of like the Gummo of comedy.
Yeah.
Because everyone in it is like kind of like looks like inbred or like
kind of like fucked up.
And everyone's kind of like fucked up.
That one scene where John Heder is eating spaghetti in a bathtub while a tornado sweeps through town.
They're like eating raw eggs. There's something like nasty about it, and everything's like kind of like grimy and trashy.
Yeah, it's just that like sort of like truthful melancholy of life before, you know, like hyper globalized. You can get like any food anytime. It's like, no, these motherfuckers are farmers. They're eating eggs.
They're eating eggs and white bread, and then so many people in the movie were just real people. And
so they were just hanging out.
It feels a little Harmony Korine if it was comedy.
Yeah. It almost feels at times like they were halfway through shooting a Vice documentary about rural towns in Idaho, and they're like, wait a minute, let's string a story through this.
This shit is hilarious.
Like some of those kids just look like farm boys who play baseball in high school, and then they just work at a factory for the rest of their lives. You know?
They probably were.
Yeah.
I thought of that like when Napoleon's doing his performance in front of the class, like the ladies he's doing that with are like so strange looking, that group of kids. It's like, where did they get these people? And it's like probably just in Preston, Idaho.
Yeah.
It was awesome. I fucking loved it. It aged great.
Get together with two of your good friends and watch Napoleon Dynamite. I highly recommend that experience, and I highly recommend the movie. But other than that,
subscribe to Ro Ramdin. Thank you so much for being here, Ro.
If you want a YouTube channel that makes you feel like the end of Napoleon Dynamite, where you're smiling ear to ear, probably not mine, but I'm sure you'll find it.
All right, this was How Did It Age, episode 5. Thank you guys for watching. Again, if you join our Patreon, you can see which movies we're going to be watching a week ahead of time so that you can watch them as well and watch these videos with more context. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We are HiveMind Unlimited, and we will see you in the next one.
Bye. Hi.